The artist of this magnificent sculpture, IRQIQUQ SORUSILUK, probably carved this around 1953 to 1955. It's a prime example of the early SALLUIT style. Actually, the SALLUIT style sadly only lasted about 10 years. It blossomed between the early 50s and the early 1960s. But interestingly, probably half of the sculptors were women, and this was very unusual in those days. SALLUIT was very democratic in its art making in that sense. And many of the prime examples of SALLUIT sculpture were carved by women artists. The work is classic SALLUIT. They never found any beautiful carving stone there. Almost all works are carved in this relatively coarse gray stone, but they just used it to its fullest. And I've always felt some strange connection between classic SALLUIT sculpture and European Romanesque sculpture from the 11th and 12th centuries. Some of the features that are typical SALLUIT are the mixture of traditional Inuit garb and Southern style dress. That's actually quite common in SALLUIT sculpture, unlike most other communities. The static kind of stoic pose of the woman, also the way that the pleats in the skirt and the creases in the arms have been treated almost like drapery, is also typical of her work and the SALLUIT style. Interesting features of this work are the strangely cap-like hairstyle of the woman, which almost looks like a male hairstyle. One of the charming, tender aspects of it is that this older child is still nursing and pulling on the obviously depleted breast of the mother. She looks stoically forward, but somehow we can feel her pain. I just love the strange angle at which the child, you would think that the child would fall down at this angle, but is gently held up by the mother's arms. Interestingly, also, she's made this kind of fluted design on the base. I mean, the very fact that she's carved a base is a little bit unusual in Inuit sculpture, although not so unusual in SALLUIT sculpture. But that fluted pattern kind of echoes the fluted drapery look of her dress. As I mentioned, the classic SALLUIT style only lasted about 10 years. It may be that the stone, the relatively unluscious aspect of the gray stone did not appeal so much. We have to remember that in the late 50s, SALLUIT was actually probably the chief rival to Cape Dorset in terms of sculpture production. And by the late 50s, Cape Dorset had begun finding the beautiful green stones that would make the sculpture from there famous. So perhaps in comparison to the luscious green sculptures that were coming out of Cape Dorset at the time, the SALLUIT works perhaps looked a little stolid. Also, by the late 50s and early 60s, Cape Dorset artists like IRQIQUQ were producing the remarkable spirit works, while the artists in SALLUIT were still producing mostly mothers and children depictions of family life and hunting scenes. So perhaps, by comparison, they seemed a little old-fashioned. It's a shame, because I think SALLUIT sculpture is one of the great flowerings of Inuit art.